Hey everybody, I am Amy. I'm the creative director for My Heart Creative, and I'm here with John Phipps. He is the pastor at the Good Fight Church, and I want to give you a little bit of intro for him. He's a friend of the Samuels, and a longtime client of My Heart Creative, one of our early clients. And him and his wife have been married for 14 years. And they started the church plant, which we'll get more into, and that's in Yukon, Oklahoma. They have an amazing story of how they started small and grew something, took the next step to the next step, and I think that's going to really be cool for everybody to hear today. And we'll talk about website stuff and all that, but I want you to know John at the end of this. He's a dad, too. We were both just talking about how our kids are, sick. Sam was supposed to do this, and we have, one virus, and his kids have another virus, so at the end of this, we may have, a whole new virus.
That's right. Gift that keeps on giving.
So anyways, but I'm very, very thankful to have him, and
Glad to be here.
I'm glad that you guys are our clients. So as we start, if you guys have any questions for John, just put them in the comments, and or if you have something nice to say, that's always good. And then also we'll put a link to the church's site at some point too. So I wanted to start out by talking about the group,
Okay.
how everything got started. But before all that, I guess you can maybe, how did you get into ministry, or why did you start this group? Tell us about the group.
Okay. Well, first, thanks for having me. Sam, I know you're online, so thanks for inviting me. This started way 3 or 4 months ago, so I've been looking forward to this day. So how I got into ministry, I'll kind of give you the short version of basically growing up. I say this is short, and then I start with, hey, once upon a time, when I was 3. No, I was... I'll just start with the year 2007. I'm an alcoholic. I'm a recovered alcoholic. And I was living a life of just misery. I didn't believe in God. I had no religion. I had no structure. But I had a pretty good life. I had a college degree. I was a veteran. I married a beautiful woman. Beautiful.
Very sweet.
Yeah, way married above my pay grade for sure. And I had a good job. I had no debt. I had no kid. I mean, everything was just great. And I was as miserable as I've ever been. And it was about when I graduated college in 2007. I had just got out of the military, had gone back to school, and just got a good job, just graduated, and I pretty much didn't want to live any longer. And I was just trying to drink myself to death. And long story short, on Christmas morning of 2007, I woke up and my heart was changed. I couldn't explain it at the time. Now I know, looking back, the Holy Spirit and everything that God had done in my life. And I just woke up thinking, I am so hungover. I am miserable. I am hurting so bad. And the fact of the matter was my heart was just broken. And it was shortly after that I got into recovery. I was introduced to the church. I was saved, got baptized. And so that was my introduction into ministry. And it was through that process, years had gone by, but God is just refining me and purifying me and pointing me in the right direction. And so we started the group actually in 2010, and it started as a small group. The church that we were going to at the time, they allowed us to start a group, and the reason why is because I was going to all kinds of recovery around the local area, and I just wasn't finding anything that I felt was spiritually productive. I'd say it that way. I mean, there are a lot of good groups, but it just seemed the ones I went to, I always felt worse after going to the group. I felt I'd come home and my wife would say, "Hey, how was it?" And I said, "I feel like I need a drink after going to the group instead of being fed." And so we wanted to try to do something. So we decided, well, why don't we start a group? And we really enjoyed Celebrate Recovery, and we really enjoyed AA and NA and some of those type of groups. And so we kind of took a little bit of everything. And we started this 12-step process for Christians. And it's not just for alcohol or drugs. It was for anyone that was experiencing life-controlling problems. And so we always found out that the alcohol, the drugs, the women, the whatever your problem was, that wasn't the problem. The real problem is us. And those were just symptoms. Yeah. And so we started that in 2010. And through that, we kind of, whenever God showed us, okay, let's turn this into a ministry, we sat down and said, okay, where do we want to be in 5 years? Where do we want to be in 7 years? And we started to map that out where we thought God was leading us. Now, there's a whole lot of story that I'm leaving out. But over 3 or 4 years, it's about 4 years that there were around 800 to 1,200 people going through our ministry every single month. And I had been hired on at a church, and I had left the church in December of 2014 or January of 2015, not to plant a church, but to be part of the ministry. And the reason I stepped away from the church was not because I didn't like the church, it's because my family was actually not doing well. And that's a whole other story I'm sure we'll get into in here in
story within a story within a
story within a story within a story. But yeah, so all this just to weave it together, that's how I was introduced into ministry. That's why we started the group. And then I kind of jumped off there about how we started the church, but we'll get into that, I'm sure, in just a little bit.
Yeah, that's amazing. What a story already. I mean, so the group was originally called The Good Fight.
The Good Fight Ministries. Yeah, originally the name was actually Overcomers.
Oh, really?
Because
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it was a small group at our church, and they called them life groups at the time. And yeah, so we needed a name, and so we chose Overcomers based on a group that we'd had at our previous church in Dallas.
Oh.
And so that's kind of where we took it. And then once we went from a small group to a ministry after a few months, we changed the name to the Good Fight Ministries.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have one of your shirts. Every time I look at it, I'm just like, yeah, we're fighting the good fight. I love the name, so that's cool. It's not a fight group, not like that kind of group.
No, we've been confused. People ask, like, so are y'all
Someone
MMA?
shows up and they're like ready to go.
We're ready to roll, man. And I was like, no, it's not that. It's not that kind of group.
So Sam said he can't be sneaky. Because he was trying to watch you, but he said good seeing you. He has if you have questions. So that's great. Okay, so tell me about like some of the, just because I'm sure there are people watching, they may be starting a business or starting an organization or even a group. And so tell us, like, what were some of the scary times of like getting that group started, or even at the times that I was getting like so many people, maybe like some of those challenges, or did you feel like you were taking risks or?
At the time, I think I was too young and too excited to be scared as far as the groups was concerned, because I was working full-time as well. So there weren't a lot of risks. Starting the church is a whole different story. I mean, just the level of responsibility and the honor it is to be the bride of Christ and to lead that. It was a whole nother realm of, oh my gosh, are we really going to do this? Mm. And so as a family, it was a whole different dynamic, and there were a lot of risks. And I think one of the biggest fears that I have and that I continue to have, it's an insecurity of mine, is just the fear of failure, and the fear of that I'm going to let down God and my family and other people. And that's just something you have to be on top of.
Yeah,
and
how
to
do
share.
you deal with that?
Transparency and just being vulnerable. As a church, one thing that we are centered on Jesus Christ, obviously, but we're a value-driven church. And so everything we do is centered around what we believe. And so we just stay true to that. We have a core value that says that we will be completely authentic, that we'll drop the mask, and we know that true healing doesn't begin until you even drop that pride. Yes. And so we live by that. And so everyone that's in our leadership, everyone that's bought into the church, and I say bought in, everyone that goes to our church and believes that they call this their home church, they see that on a week in and week out basis.
That's really amazing. So, I mean, to say the fear of failure and the way you do that is just be yourself almost. Just
be yourself.
Or stay true to as a Christian, your values and who you are and what you stand for. But even as a company, even just like why you started, or the values that drive your company, versus focusing on the fear, just focus on like who you are.
Absolutely. Like, whatever we can do, but make sure everything's out in front. We talk about as a staff, that our goals, our interest, what we're striving to do, what we're trying to get accomplished, always have it in front of us. Make sure everyone else can see it because they can hold you accountable, that we can hold each other accountable, and that and not just hold each other accountable, but help each other get to that mark that we need to get to. And understand that we are going to fail, and failure is a good thing as long as it's done in the right way. And it's done because we're trying and we can't achieve it, not because we're lazy and we don't want to do it. So now always we think that we should always have it out in front of us, and that way we can help each other too.
Cool, very good. So I will ask you. So we built your website when the group was really becoming large. So how did the website help you guys out during that time? Or what did you use it? Do you remember what you used the website for originally? Because I know you used to write, and I don't know if you're still writing, but I used to have a great
kind of.
That's like
I'm doing a lot more studying than I used to now that I'm preaching more.
And more preaching.
So I'm writing a lot, but not as much content for a book or for blogging as I used to. But at first, we wanted the website because we wanted to expose as many people to the good news as possible. Not unlike the church, but just we wanted to let people know there is a solution, that there is hope, that there is a place that people can come to, regardless of affiliation with churches, denominations, or even religion for that matter. We just wanted people to see that, hey, there's a place that you can go that's safe, that you can be comfortable enough to go take your problems.
Be human.
Your problems. Yeah, and more importantly, that there was a solution. That it wasn't just a place where you go and talk about insurance, being too much money and my cat died, and those are all problems. But we want to make sure that we're solution focused. And so the website was originally, the intent was to be able to share it with as many people as possible and let them know that there are solutions. We also want to make sure they knew that they could get a Bible through our program, that there's mentorship, that there was speaking, and more importantly, that there was more groups available than just in our immediate area in Yukon, that we had several at the time throughout the Metroplex.
That's right, and different meeting times.
Yeah, different meeting times.
I remember there was like videos, people telling their stories.
Yeah.
That's really good. Well, okay, so from there, then I remember you saying, hey, we're going to this is going to change to a church. And I was like, wow, okay. Yeah. So tell us how what made you say, okay, we've got this group, now we're going to have a church?
Okay, so this is kind of where I stopped off at the first part. Yeah. And this is always really tough to get through, but I'm just trying to be honest.
Be honest.
Because I had a great job at a great church here in the local area, and I still love that church to this day. And so this was towards the end of 2014, and our ministry was doing great. I was working at the church, and my wife and I started to have marital problems. And I stopped, I left the church in order to get my life back, in order to get my marriage back in order. And when I say that, it sounds
weird to say, like, I left the church to get this part in order.
Yeah, and it really is, because it's like, okay, well, if you're working for the church and you're working for God, so
you can still be working too much. No, I'm just kidding.
You really can't. And that's the thing, is my priorities had changed. And it happened very subtly, and that's one of the dangerous things about anything that we do, that we have to be very careful that we can disguise working for God, and justify what we're doing. And it was on both of our ends, me and Christy both, is that ministry had become priority one, even over God. And I didn't even realize it, because it was so easily justified to work, 40, 50, 60 hours or whatever, in any job, not just the church. And so my priorities had changed. I wasn't present. I wasn't present enough at home.
Yeah.
And so I stepped away from the church in order to strengthen my marriage. And it was through that process that whenever I stepped away, that God presented an opportunity. Now, I plan on stepping back and going full-time with our ministry, because we're to the point where we needed someone to do the daily operations. And so I knew what I was going into, but it was during that process that someone approached us and asked us if we'd like to do a church at this house that they had, and they were renovating it. And I said, well, let's take a look at it. And he showed me, and I said, I don't know, what do you think? And he's like, well, let's do it next week. And I was like, no, I just stepped away like 2 days ago. I need a few months. And so over the next few months, I got hired on in our ministry, and then our board voted to turn the ministry into a church. And so the thought was to continue to do groups, which we still do to this day. We call them restoration groups. And we offer as many restoration groups, but we also have a church service. And so now it's centered around Jesus, just like it was, but now we're the bride of Christ. And so there's not just restoration groups. And I think a lot of people were confused when we first became a church. They're the recovery church. They're that church, and we are that church, but it's not just recovery.
But you know what? It's crazy is like, even if you were that church, I think everyone is almost recovering from something. Like really, because, there's been things in my life that I've had to recover from, Sam's had to recover from, and like, even if it's not what you would think of like as an addiction, even like what you're saying, working hard can be a life-controlling problem.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sin wants to control you. So we're all just...
Yeah, we had a saying back in the early days, and we still say, if you don't walk on water, this group is for you.
Yes, I remember that, and I love it.
We love that because basically I think that everyone could go through a restoration process. And that's just saying it's like a systematic sanctification. And that's kind of a fancy way to say...
That is fancy.
It is. It's a little churchy to say, okay, all it is...
Am I going to ask him theological questions? I'm like, I don't even know what those would exactly be.
Well, I put it this...
Sanctification alone.
My wife hates it when I say sanctification or anything like that. So I would just say this. Sanctification to us is just growing closer to God.
Yeah. We can all do that.
Yeah, and so anything that's got a grip on your life, whether it's TV, alcohol, pornography, anything. And the thing is we have a lot of taboo subjects in our society, especially within the church. And so it's uncomfortable to talk about it. But this is for anyone. And basically everyone is broken. At our church, we believe that we have a wounded heart. And that's what kind of separates our church. And I'm sure we'll get into that here in a minute. But
yeah, I was wondering some things like, so because there's lots of churches.
Yeah.
So it kind of came to you like someone was saying, why don't you do this? Which I'm sure a lot of businesses even start like that. But so it was like someone just put the opportunity out there. And then obviously you guys are different because you came out of a restoration group, right, or the restoration church. But what else makes you guys unique?
Well, first I'd like to say, like, for people to think, oh, wow, God just laid this on the table, which he did. But most people don't know that our story began back in 2010 when we started the group. And so there was a lot of hard work, a lot of people involved in making this happen. It wasn't just myself and my wife. There were a lot of people who
volunteering and give hours and ideas and
not only that, but just
I
like
remember them all at your house.
Yeah, and we
some of them,
we started at our
throwing
house.
out ideas, and you guys were throwing out candy. These people like candy.
Yeah, we do.
Like in a crazy way.
Yeah.
Like, there was just like bowls of candy. I think we like sweets, but y'all are at the next level of sweets.
Yeah, we a lot of us switched out alcohol drugs for candy. I think, but that's okay.
That's dangerous.
Yeah, it is dangerous.
For the size. But anyways, sorry.
So where were we? What were we talking about?
No.
Oh, no, okay.
The group, because it took a lot of hard work. It was not just you, because I was just saying someone gave you the opportunity.
Oh, yeah, someone gave us an opportunity.
But you were saying that a lot of the foundation work actually happened in the group.
Yeah, and I try to always point that out is that people think, well, wow, they just wildly just all of a sudden started church. And no, when we first decided to have this ministry, when we sat down and said, what does this look like in 3 years and 5 years and 7 years? We always believed that God was going to move this to a church. We felt called even early on. We didn't know how that was going to happen or what it looked like. So there was always a plan. And so it started years and years before that. But when we started the church, and kind of, I don't know if this was the question or not, but what kind of separates us from other churches or makes us different, not separates us.
And what keeps you, what is different? I don't know.
Well, we focus on three things.
Okay.
Now, Christ is obviously at the center of all of this, but we focus on the head, hands, and heart. And the hands being, or the head being the knowledge. It's you have to know the word. You have to know that Jesus is at the headship of our church. Mm-hmm. And then you have the hands, which is the people. It's all relational. And we believe that it's through the people that we are the body, that we are the bride. And so we are able to accomplish a lot as the hands and feet of Christ. And then you have the last part, which I believe that most churches don't focus on as much. And if you look at it as a stool, a three-legged stool, a lot of people focus on those two legs, the head and the hands, but we don't focus on the heart. And we believe that we're born into a world of depravity, which means we're born into a broken world. We are all sinners by nature. And so we all have at some level a broken heart, whether it's a bad relationship that we had when we were younger, a broken marriage, or even divorced parents or school. Something's happened to us in that we have this wound in our heart. And instead of dealing with it, that we've suppressed it or we've covered it up and we've created this scar or we've left this wound open and we just move on. And what it does is it creates problems in our lives. And so if we truly believe that the greatest commandment is to love God and to love others, you can't separate the two. That the vertical relationship with the Father is on the same plane as the horizontal relationship with people. And it can't be love God and then I'll love people later. It has to be both. You can't separate them. And so I like to look at it as this, is if we love God, our ability to love God is completely capped off by our inability to love people. And a good example of this in the Bible, you look at the one another statements, like share your burdens with one another, forgive one another, love one another. And there's I think there's like 50 or so of these commands, but we don't focus on those as much as we do as love God. Because I don't know about y'all, but I've known plenty of people that love God and love Jesus enough, but yet they still have a lot of problems in their life. And as a church, I was always told, well, you just got to love Jesus more. You just got to love Jesus more, and then that's your problem. If you're not loving Jesus more, well, then I don't know what's wrong with them. And that's not the case. There's plenty. I love Jesus just fine, but I still have problems in my life.
I have a question that has to do with like recovery and stuff. Do you think that, when people have like a life controlling problem, do you see that most of the time it happens like when that problem kind of breaks them free, or like what you said, you kind of woke up and then you knew. Do you think it most of the time happens instantaneously, or is it a process?
No. Most of the time, it's a process.
I feel like it's a process too.
It is. Very, very seldom, very rarely is it a spiritual awakening.
Yeah.
I started in AA. And in AA, it even says in the book that very few people have that spiritual awakening.
Right.
That it happens like that.
I think sometimes people expect it to be like that. Kind of like what you're saying. If I just love Jesus, then it should be like, poof, gone.
Yeah, like, oh, no. I'm good now.
Right.
They feel good for a few days, and then they don't understand why they keep going back out. It's because they have this wounded heart. And they don't know how to get out of that because they're loving Jesus, but they don't know what to do. And one thing about our church is that we want to give those people an option of, hey, you want to discover what the real problem is, come to the restoration groups. And I think so many times as a church, what did we do 100, 150 years ago when people had problems like we have at the church? We didn't say go to a Christian counselor. We didn't say, hey, here's go here, go there. The church had to take care of it.
Each other.
Yeah, and so I feel like that's one thing that we're doing, and a lot of churches do this. I just don't think they have built their church up right. It's our focus, and we want to make sure people understand that we are those people. Whereas in most churches you go in and they have programs, parachurches almost inside the church, and those are those people. But we're already those people, and that's why we're going to be so transparent and so vulnerable, and it can be very uncomfortable. And we're going to be upfront with people that come to our church is that this may not be for you, and that's okay. I'd gladly help you get plugged into a local church somewhere.
Yeah. Obviously that's important. So I remember just talking like practicality, because you were saying about like, how the church started, but some of it happened, in the group. And even like your website, we were able to take that and just like make some tweaks and like get it ready for church mode.
Yeah.
I feel like, so that a lot of that was happened on the initial, and then we were doing like your top notes and stuff for a while.
Yeah.
There's so much that like details that people don't even know. Like, because it's not like you just showed up and was like, "Hi, I'm going to preach today."
I know, and I think that's what people understand. Believe it or not, I don't just work like 3 hours a week and I preach and that's it.
Yeah.
There is so much work that goes on the back end of things. You guys did a fantastic job. My Heart Creative was such a blessing to us. And there at the early stages, we didn't know what we were doing. We still don't know what we're doing half the time. But we were trying to figure it out. You guys were there every step of the way. So we really do appreciate that.
Yeah, well, that's something that I'm going to thank you at some point. But yeah, I appreciate that. And we're happy to be with you guys on this journey because it's really amazing. That was something that drew us in. It's just how you guys were dealing with reality. You were like dealing in reality with the life controlling stuff. So that was always attractive.
Trying to.
Speaking of reality, I do have some holiday-ish questions because it is that time of year.
Sure.
So I was just wondering, like you're a pastor, so I can get advice from you. So
Sure. Take it for what you want. Yeah.
So what advice do you give small business owners or founders of a nonprofit, someone who's got a ton of, like if they were running a big group, all like an organizational leader, like how do you feel like someone should navigate the holidays? Where should their focus be? Or because I think sometimes the holidays can be like really great and then not good for people. So what's your advice?
Over the last few years, one thing that I've tried to do is to realize that, well, especially nonprofits and churches during the holidays, it's such a critical time, especially nonprofits, because a lot of end of year giving is done at that time. And if it's planned right, if it's planned or if it's well planned, it should be as much work on those November and December. But sometimes it's kind of, you gotta learn and kind of get refined by the fire first.
Yeah.
So I would say this is that, plan everything and be well planned throughout the year. That way, whenever the holiday comes, I try to always remind myself to be more focused on the heart than the task, especially when it comes for the people that we're working with side by side, is that November and December shouldn't be more stressful than any other month.
That's good.
And that I care far more about the person next to me and their heart than I do about the task at hand. But in order to get that task accomplished, maybe it's more planning and it's harder work during the year instead of the last few months, because it's such a critical time, whether it's a nonprofit or a church, is that there's so much more emotion in the holidays. There's more memories tied to it.
Yeah.
There's more thoughts of loss. There's more thoughts of pain.
Emotional time,
yeah, and so a lot of people don't just relate the holidays with joy and festivities. They relate it to a lost loved one. They relate it to a lost job, a season of their life. And to always be just cognizant of what's going on around the people that you're working with and the volunteers that are making your organization run.
And that's good.
Just make sure that it never becomes more about the task than it does about the heart.
That's good. Taking care of your people too, with that in mind. So then just, if we are going to focus on the heart and maybe some of the positive,
sure.
Give us some tips to spread the hope of Jesus this time of year, to love on people, show them your heart, serve. How can we help the Good Fight Church? Things like that. Yeah,
I'd say the first and foremost is whenever you're out about, the way we evangelize the people, and that word evangelize can seem so yucky.
No, what is all these words?
Yeah, well, just think about this church where, like, when people hear evangelize, like, when I hear it, I always think of, like, the guy that's going to be on the corner asking me for change for some reason. And that's not what it is. It's just, televangelist and things like that. It's like, okay, here's this guy and he's going to ask me for money. And I'd say this time of the year is evangelizing, or any time of the year really is, it just means to proclaim the gospel. That's all it is. And I think that more people are paying attention to the way we're living our lives. But they want to be part of something that's bigger than themselves. I believe that everyone's created with that desire in their heart to know God, and they're built that way. And I'd say just continue to live a high integrity filled life, and it's more about your character than it is about your inviting them to church. But I would say this, is that people are more likely to go to church during this season. Again, like I said, I think people are lonely. I think they're desiring something more. But we need to do a better job of getting out there and asking people and sharing the good news. And it's not about like what they're doing wrong. It's about what God's doing right in your life. I always try to remember that. It's like, tell them what's going on in your life. Don't tell them what's going on in their life. They already know how bad or messed up or how great their life is. And just share them what's going on in your life. And as far as our church, we have a lot of renovations.
Yeah, like there's some major things going on.
Yeah, we have someone donated an old bowling alley.
One of my questions is, where are you at? So just tell us.
Yeah, we're at 500 East Main in Yukon. That's where we are during the week. That's where we have all of our groups. That's where we have Bible studies, men's groups, women's groups, restoration groups on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 6:30. But church, we are at Canadian Valley Baptist off 15th and Mustang Road there in South Yukon. And we're there on Saturday nights at 6 p.m. That's our church service. You can go to our website at thegoodfight.church, and you can get all the details, the address. You can give. You can look at our groups. You can just find out what we're about at our website.
That's awesome. So do you guys have any special holiday services planned?
We do. I'm really excited.
Saturday night before Christmas?
Yeah. See, right now we're on Saturday nights.
It's like perfect.
Yeah, it's perfect. And we're actually partnering with Canadian Valley Baptist, the church that we're meeting at right now. Mm-hmm. We're going to join services with them. And so we're going to have one Christmas, one church. And so on Saturday night at 6 p.m. on December 23rd, we're going to have a regular service, and their pastor is going to preach Saturday night, and we're going to have a candlelight service. And then on Sunday morning on December 24th at 10:30, I'm going to preach, and we're going to have Lord's Supper together with their church as well. So awesome. Both of our churches are going to combine, get away from the denominations, and just have one church, one service for Christmas. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, that's really cool. So if you don't have a church as a home, or if you need to focus on your heart right now, go see John.
That's right. Come check us out.
About you.
We do. We have a lot of people that want to love on you and help you find the best place for you. And it's not about us. It's about God. Always want to glorify Him. And we feel like the best way we can do that is to help you navigate what's going on in your heart and point you in the right directions.
I think we have, most of the people that are on our Facebook, they're either like a mom, baby wearing kind of, or they're a business owner. So I think I'll just say from a mom's perspective, like focusing more on the heart versus on the things is just the way to survive the holidays. And then I also think as a business owner, if we didn't have our heart right, we would struggle way more than we did, because it is always, life is a struggle, but it's way better. So go see John.
Yeah, and not only that, one more piece of advice, if you are struggling right now during the holiday, talk to your employer. Reach out to us, reach out to My Heart Creative, reach out to someone, because the worst thing we can do is to keep it all in.
Yeah.
And then you're looking at January, you're depressed, in February, it just gets worse. Very rarely does it ever get better. You need to figure out what's going on. And the only way to do that starts by dropping the pride and talking to someone. Surely there's someone in your life or in your circle that's gone through something similar. And as a church, that's what we want to help you try to figure out is, hey, don't be embarrassed. Don't go through life with shame and guilt. Trust me, I did that for years, and it didn't work out well. So
yeah, because you were saying it all hit you around Christmas time.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
We don't want that for the people. Well, I just want to thank you for being one of our first clients. It has really been a pleasure creating for you. We've done things like race logos and brochures, like the talk notes, and of course the website. We love Christy and we love John, and we're praying for you guys. We're praying for the church. In 2018, hopefully, big things are coming, and I think that people need to be in. When your heart is broken, or if you're dealing with a life controlling problem, or you just need the heart, hands, people, connection, authenticity, can come your way.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah. Thank you for all you guys have done for us. We really appreciate it.
Of course. All right. Well, if you guys want to ask John anything, it can be theological too, because I didn't throw any hardballs this way. No, I'm kidding. Ask anything you want in the comments. Leave us a comment or a like or a heart or whatever, especially if you're watching this later. And we will link this up on our page for you to enjoy, and we'll put a link to your website.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and you guys don't forget to miss their Christmas service on Saturday night at
6 p.m.
on the 23rd.
On the 23rd.
And then Sunday morning at the 24th.
10:30.
10:30.
10:30 a.m.
Yes. And
Canadian
John
Valley
will be
Baptist.
speaking at that one. But then,
Yes.
And the candlelight's night before. Is that right?
Yes, it is.
So, yeah. Go find some Christmas joy. Anyways, bye, everybody. Thank
See
you
you guys.
so much.